So I'm very close to publishing the Steam page for my strategy game Vanguard Tactics. I've been working hard on improving the visuals, so there's an overall style and the different graphics reach the same quality level. Part of this has been reworking the backgrounds that show up during the combat animations. The old ones were completely usable, but now I can create better graphics because I've gained experience and got more comfortable with digital art. I'm even using different software. As a solo developer, redoing stuff can be a big time sink. It's not the smartest move if you look at the whole picture. But sometimes I have to listen to the artistic voice telling me, this could look much better and could raise the level of the whole game. When I finished the backgrounds for the new mining UI, I was very happy with the result and started thinking it doesn't make sense this tiny UI looks nicer than the combat backgrounds that show up all the time, so I used them as a reference for the rework. When I made the video about how to make gorgeous 2D game levels, already explained many ways to make backgrounds look good, so it was finally time to follow my own advice. The original backgrounds lined up perfectly, so it was a big image cut in half. But there's a problem. For example, there's two units in combat, and each one is in a forest. It seems like they are in the same spot, next to each other, and it feels even more odd when this happens with units like snipers attacking from a distance. That's why now they don't line up, and the left and right sides are different. Maybe the most time consuming here was making each tree different, and then shading them with nice shapes to give some volume. This excessive detailing in the light shapes could have been avoided by not zooming in so much. Looking back at the old trees, they were a completely different style, much more rough and messy. When doing this, I remembered some environment artist advice I saw online. In real forests, trees don't grow pointing exactly upwards. It depends on the slope of the ground. Also mentioned how there's some trees that may be in a bad condition or a different state, so added some fallen branches, dead trees, and also a wood stump. Imagine this wood has been under the elements for a long time, getting soaked wet, then dry, and so on repeat. I used a simple trick to add color variety to repetitive elements like trees, rocks, or fallen branches. Just change the hue a little bit using filters. Then reuse the same filters for the night versions, and avoided messing around with layers or colors. When coloring the mountains, spent a big chunk making the detailed shapes of the grass to indicate volume and lighting. To make the backgrounds more pleasing to the eye, I followed this idea of clamping the small objects into different patches. There's always a few flowers next to each other, the same with rocks. And then the different types of vegetation are clamped together into zones, leaving some empty space. Another part I improved from the old version is the bumpy ground. Allowed myself to be more painterly to convey the cracks and shadows of the surface and make it look more 3D. In the older version there were no flowers, but I thought it would be nice to bring another color to break the green pattern of the grass. If we put them next to each other, you can see how the old one looks flat, like a piece of cardboard. But in the new one, there's layers of mountains until reaching the horizon line at the sea. This feeling of depth or distance is because of the drawing, but the coloring also plays a big part. Like I explained in the other video, recreating the principle of atmospheric perspective is what sells the effect. This happens in real life. When you look at the horizon, as the mountains get farther away, their color blends in with the color of the sky. I've done a bit more artistic and colorful interpretation, but it's the same idea. It may seem a trivial choice, but it also took some trial and error to decide the proper colors for the different layers of mountains and vegetation, so the foreground pops from the background, and at the same time, the background slowly blends in towards the sky. When the daylight version was done, it was time to find compatible colors that look good for the night backgrounds. The line art also comes into play, changing the line thickness depending on the distance from the camera, and also choosing colors to separate the different background planes. The plane is the simpler background compared to the others, basically the same terrain as the forest without the trees. You've probably heard many times how creativity flourishes when there are some boundaries. From early on in the project, I had self-imposed the limitation to not use gradients. It made sense for the unit animations to save time, but doesn't make sense for me in the backgrounds. Just a bit of airbrush for the lighting, shading or the sky looks good and doesn't take too much time. Overall, the clouds have changed drastically. Before, they were big and simple shapes. Now, they're much more detailed, with interesting shapes. Maybe it's even too cloudy for some backgrounds. Before, there was just one city background used everywhere. To add variety, without going crazy, I decided to make two versions from the same base structure. These backgrounds show up when there's combat in any type of building, so they have this multi-purpose industrial vibe. The idea from early on was to have some old town buildings with rock walls that had been expanded with new materials and parts for a new use. There's been focus on the piping and drain pipes, and also the new joints were the new parts attached to the original building. I've learned many of these from watching over the years the artist Mateusz Urbanovics here on YouTube. He's based in Japan and paints many backgrounds and buildings from over there. After spending so much time lighting trees and the mountain grass, this time I zoomed out and just painted the light on the moss a bit looser, and it saved so much time. Zooming too much is one of the beginner's mistakes I catch myself doing sometimes. It's so easy to do in digital art. Made the whole thing in Clip Studio Paint, and then exported the whole backgrounds and cut them in half in Krita. If you paid attention, you might have seen there's some trees or walls that should be on front of everything, so also exported each of them. The backgrounds themselves don't have these foreground elements, so they're not duplicated, because then the transitions would look strange. Then imported all these assets into Unity, and had to make the code to load it properly, so it shows the day or night version for that terrain, and hides everything else. After the whole process, this is how it looks in-game. Hope you liked it. Please don't miss the new devlogs. I will announce when the Steam page is online. See you soon.